Elijah Muhammad noticed that a lot of black Americans had an unhealthy obsession with white people. An unhealthy obsession with white people. And I believe that was part of what the devil concept served to rectify, to get rid of. I've always looked at it as a counter to this unhealthy obsession with white people. Remember, he was the harshest critic of integration before it actually happened. He was one of the harshest critics of integration. He would speak to those who followed Dr. King fighting for integration. He produced the most classic lectures criticizing that crowd of black Americans. And it was all accurate. I used to listen to those lectures. I mean, it sounds like a father talking to his son. A big reason why eventually Martin Luther King wanted to meet him, wanted to talk and have a sit down. Big reason why later in his life, Dr. King started to sound more and more like Elijah Muhammad in terms of, politically and where blacks needed to go. But I believe the devil concept, it served many purposes, and this was one of them. He saw that black Americans had a very unhealthy and abnormal. It's abnormal. He saw that we had an abnormal obsession with white people. And you got to get rid of that. That go for any group. Can't be obsessed. That will wipe you out. Now, since it wasn't addressed, was there any backlash to being obsessed with white people? Yep. In what way? In the way of shoveling out trillions of dollars. Black America lost trillions of dollars over this obsession with white people. There you go. Millions every single year. No, it's actually billions, I think. Black America loses billions, millions to billions every single year. All over this obsession with white people. And y'all know what I'm talking about. Listen, black women are a part of black America. For the majority of black people, they're in a single mother home. So that's money lost from black American homes. So literally, that's money thrown out the window every single year. You grow hair for free. But because of this abnormal obsession with not only white people, but everybody who's not black, it has resulted in black women, because only black women do this. It used to be both black men. Now it's just black women aspired to literally be those other people. When you're putting those people's hair on your head, you're going beyond trying to duplicate their look. At that point, you're trying to be someone else. Y'all remember that Brad who was on a date with a black girl? And he saw her online with a wig on. But when he saw her in person, she had braids or something. And he asked her, he said, "Could you put your white girl hair back on?" Oh, yeah. The whole world sees it. That wouldn't happen in the Nation of Islam. That won't happen if you're not obsessed with other people. If you're obsessed instead with yourself, you're not going to be buying other people's hair. And listen, the hair, that's just one example. There's many other ways. Now, if anybody who disagrees, I know that not all white people are evil and devil, and that's not what he was saying either. He was pressed multiple times on this devil's concept. And I remember one interview, it's on YouTube somewhere, where they asked him, do you really think all whites are devils? Like, hey, some white people are harmless. You know what his answer was? He said, well, some snakes are harmless, but it's still a snake. It might not have any venom, but it's still a snake. And there's a lot of truth to that. And this has been substantiated even by many whites. I remember, who was that guy? That white guy. He used to talk about racism and white privilege a lot. And man, please, we learned this in college. They taught this to us in college, in sociology. Many college students, you know what I'm talking about. Where they talked about how covert racists, well, not covert racists, unknowing racists. Remember, there's overt, covert, and unknowing. They would talk about how unknowing racists still operated in the world to benefit or maintain the status quo because they had pro-white and anti-black ideologies, despite having black friends here or there. You see? So there's some truth to that. So what I'm saying is this, it makes sense and I get it. I don't have to co-sign with it. I just don't need to believe that a whole group of people are devils. I just understand that entire groups of people can be on code. And that's more of how I look at white America, as on code, as having like beliefs and ideologies. Even the ones who have black friends and maybe even, black people live with them or whatever. And this is just the truth. If y'all be truthful with yourselves, it's a fact. Yeah, they might date you. They might marry you. But they still don't believe that you and your people should lead the country. They don't believe that the Senate, the White House, government, they don't believe it should be 98% black people. And they would not actively support that. I'm like, nah, I love you, honey. But I don't think that's the smart thing to do. They can date you. They can have black friends. I've known many of them. But they still believe that you're intellectually inferior and not as evolved as they themselves are. Isn't that an unhealthy way to look at another person? And I think that devil concept it was like designed for, people who are not that educated or who don't think on deep levels, right? For the most uneducated person. That's why a lot of uneducated people gravitated towards Elijah Muhammad, because he made things extremely simple. He was also referred to as a psychologist by Amos Wilson. Amos Wilson referred to him as a psychologist. He said Elijah Muhammad was the greatest psychologist black people ever produced. That's what Amos Wilson said. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Because our primary problem is mental. Primary problem is mental. And the fact is, if black women, and they don't have to view whites and others as devils, if black women looked at other races in a really unfavorable manner, they wouldn't wear those people's hair. They just wouldn't. If they felt like those people were against them, yeah, they wouldn't disgrace themselves like that. When the truth is, many of them, they don't like black. Listen, man, people need to be honest with themselves. I believe the caste system still exists in India. There are unofficial caste systems all over the world. You go to several countries, you find the exact same thing everywhere you go, don't you? No matter where you go, blacks are on the bottom, and they're actively put there. Things have been put in place to put them there and keep them there. I'm saying no matter where you go, South America, the islands, Africa, Asia. I'm talking like countries like, Yemen, Philippines. Oh yeah, Cambodia. They got those dark black people all throughout Asia. They're at the bottom, actively put there. So what does that tell you? That lighter, fair-skinned populations operate against the darker. Obviously, right? Regardless of how many personal friends you may have. When it comes to government, they always come together and act against us as a group. So how much can you value individual friendship? What is it worth at that point? And I'm telling you, country after country, no matter where you go, you're going to find, even in Africa, if there's whites in those countries, they're living well. And we all know about South Africa. So how can you say, hey, you don't call white people devils? Even if you don't agree with them, you got to look at the situation as a whole and be like, okay, it should be expected. Ideologies like that should be expected from the groups who you find at the bottom, no matter where you go around the world. And understand, here's the most important part about that. You find blacks at the bottom, no matter where you go. But in the old world, those places were populated with nothing but blacks. Obviously, making them the rulers of those areas, of those lands. Right? That fills you in even more on history, right? That lets you know automatically that the fairer skinned people came later and pushed the blacks to the bottom. And it was a universal thing. It wasn't just white Americans. Fair skinned people, no matter where you go. Middle East, they're not white. They're very light skinned, but you find it. The very light skinned people all over the world are on top. And the darker you are, the darker the people, they're further on the bottom. So if not just Elijah Muhammad, any group around the world, if they come up and say, hey, these fair-skinned people are evil, what am I going to whack? Oh, don't you say that, man. No, I'm not giving lectures like that. Because, look, if you're so inhumane that you're not shocked by that fact, you're not yourself disturbed by how the pattern is the same, no matter where you go in the world, you're looked at as, like in India, they're called untouchables. They even assign them to the worst jobs. That's why here in America, they're admired so much. The Brahmin and the class system over there, a lot of them work here in the United States in high positions, right? I just recently talked about that. Those Aryans over there in India are extremely admired. I believe, wasn't it Hitler who said that's the only place where real white supremacy exists? But it's not just India. Has been the case all over the world. So rather than say, hey, that's evil and throw Elijah's contribution away, no, I put that to the side and I look at what he brought to Black America. Okay? What he brought to Black America. He cleaned up probably more Black Americans than anybody. And he started many subsequent groups that were productive. But he cleaned up a lot of people, and a lot of things he did to this day remains unmatched. I'll leave it there.